Hello, my name is Richard Wexler, and this is Caring in America, the podcast for caregivers. And as I do on every episode, a little recap of who I am and why we're doing this podcast. Roll everything back about 18 years. I'm minding my own business in the software industry, married later. My wife has a business out of the house. We have two small children, 11 and 7. This is the summer of '05. We start getting phone calls that turns into 4 phone calls, both my wife's parents, both my parents, extremely ill. So everything changed for us, and that put us on a 14-year journey that ended when the last parent passed away at 96 in 2019. Go back those 17, 18 years, I could barely spell the word care. Eventually left what I was doing in the software industry, decided I needed to learn everything I possibly could about elder care, etc. Worked on that for a period of time, began educating people on a nationwide basis about care. At the end of 2022, started thinking about the next steps, thought about a podcast, which I had never really heard a lot about. We launched in April of this year with the goal of even reaching more people. So today we're about to bring a young man on. I'll introduce him in a second. And we're going to talk about a story that he's going to relate to us about his mom, Sharon. So that young man, George Ackerman, holds a PhD, holds a Juris Doctorate, holds an MBA, and a master's in social work. Are you there, George?
Yes, sir. I wanted to thank you and your audience for the time. It means a lot to us, and just to share our journey, but also to learn. I learned something new from everyone I meet.
No problem. You're very welcome. So let's start things off by explaining to me and your audience your mom, Sharon Riff Ackerman, born on September 28, 1950 in Brooklyn. Who was she?
My mother was a very independent person, one that cared a lot about family and really sacrificed her life for to make me who I am today. And it was very important for her to have the care that I wish that no one would ever need. But I knew at that time where it was very important that I would be the one to help support her through these tough times. She unfortunately passed approximately 4 years ago due to Parkinson's disease and dementia. And I kind of, for some reason, the tougher times always stand out, but I always have to think of the better times, which were the 68 years before the disease caught up to her.
Wow. Wow. So let's back up a little bit. When did your mom first get ill?
She had it approximately 15 years, so I would say she passed in 2020, so about 15 years prior to that date.
So about '05. So about the time that this experience was starting, an adventure was starting with the 4 parents for me. A similar adventure was starting for you and your family with your mom. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I've unfortunately lost my mother, but I have gained so many amazing and inspirational individuals like you in my life. So
Wow.
with the negative, we try and bring some positive. But this togetherforsharon.com was really just developed to remember my mother and our journey. But then I learned there were about 1 million people approximately with Parkinson's disease in the U.S.
Wow.
Then I discovered only a few months ago there were about 10 million in the world. And I decided that we have to, obviously it's there from my mother and me, but it's now about more people. It's about everyone going through this in the Parkinson's community. And also, I really wanted to reach individuals who don't have Parkinson and that aren't caretakers, because the only way we're going to ever defeat this disease and find a cure is if we have everyone join in with us.
No, and I totally understand that. And I know you're not a medical doctor, but can you kind of give people that haven't experienced Parkinson's, thank God, can you kind of give them an idea of what that disease is and what it does?
Yes, and unfortunately, I mean, I could get it still. It's not, we don't know if it's genetic, but anyone, unfortunately, a listener could have it or have a friend or loved one. Basically, the first, I'd say 11, 12 years, my mother just had slight symptoms where she had a little rigidness in her left arm, so she had trouble cutting food as it progressed. But to be honest, she didn't really want to tell anyone. I never knew what Parkinson's was myself. I had to kind of fell into it. Like, when they say a lawyer doesn't learn in law school, they get their real experience when they're thrown into court after law school. I
Correct.
felt the same way, but even harsher as a caregiver getting thrown into this world. So that was really the major area. Some people have external tremors. My mother had more internal. So if you saw her, you wouldn't see the Michael J. Fox type look where he
Right.
shakes out externally, but she did have a lot of other issues such as dystonia. So she had trouble with her toes; they were curl. But she also, as the disease progressed, her health started declining, so she would lose a lot of weight. She ended up being someone who loved to walk and into fitness, and she ended up going from walking to the walker, and then to sadly the wheelchair. And when you have someone who lived, 55, 65 years, who was independent, drove, did her own shopping, did everything, and to have someone, even if it's her son, come in, take away the car keys and for her own safety,
Wow.
and really change your life instantly, something that you could never plan for. Also, I'm not a medical doctor, that's why I like when you mentioned it. I can only talk about our experience, my mother and mine. But we were told by several doctors, you don't die from Parkinson's, you die with it. But my mother didn't have any other illness at the time. Obviously, dementia set in and a lot of medicines. I mean, when she passed, we had garbage bags of medicine. So I can't imagine
Wow.
that would, help your health condition. But,
Wow.
when you're supposed to take the treatment and trust your doctors. And unfortunately, we didn't have the best of luck. And it really progressed the last year from 99 from 99 to 2000. I've never seen something attack an individual. And Parkinson's is a neurological disorder, so it affects your brain. And when you take cinnamon, the medicine, it's supposed to help the neurons and the brain to slow the progression, but it didn't really seem to work. We did try one of those trials, and the day it was towards the last 2 years of her life, and we just kind of ran out of things. We tried everything from chiropractors to physical therapy to medical marijuana, which didn't work. But I always swore that I didn't want to have any regrets, so we tried everything. So, just to conclude, the last year when she came back from that trial, I don't know if they changed her medicines too quickly, but she came back, and at 4 a.m. I got a call to rush over to her house. She had been moving her furniture out into the street, and she thought there were people inside the house that were going to harm her.
Oh, wow.
I think that was the delusions and hallucinations, and so I rushed her to the hospital. They saved her life, but I went to pick up some of her clothing. I tell this story a lot. And in her room was surrounded by post-it notes, and on the post-it notes were different names, and some of the names were people who were deceased in my family, even some animals. And she had written them down so she could differentiate, who was in reality there and who wasn't. So she was seeing her own mother and father,
Wow.
and so it was that was like really hit me, like imagine a boxer knocking you out in the boxing ring. And that's when my journey started, because I took over, everything from her banking through shopping, and I just wanted her to, at least live. We didn't know she was going to pass, in 1 year from that time or two, but I was just trying to get her comfortable and enjoy her grandkids and have a nice. I thought she'd be around for 10 more years at least.
Wow. And again, I know you're not a medical doctor, but have you heard or anyone told you that getting dementia later on during this journey is somewhat common or not? Do you know?
No, that the problem with Parkinson's is every individual is completely, different. So what happens to one individual, like my mother, might be completely wrong or correct for another. So, not everyone does have dementia when they have Parkinson, but a lot of the items are similar. Unfortunately, there are people it's called Parkinsonians who are diagnosed with Parkinson's but don't have it. That's very dangerous because then you're prescribed, the wrong medicines, which could cause other complications.
Right. And this is, as you know, a very, I'll use the word interesting time of year as adult children, grandchildren go home to see mom and dad, grandparents over the holidays. So, um, what should an adult child or a mature grandchild be looking for? Are there signs, like you said, she was not visibly shaking like a Michael J. Fox, but are there signs that someone can look for within the family?
Yeah, it's sad that, I mean, in a good way, we have the holidays, but when my mother passed, we actually had a seat for her for a few years, and just, it was really tough the holidays. The only thing I can tell you is my mother wasn't stubborn, but she was very private. She wanted me to. I was, going to law school, police officer, reserve, and also a lot of, PhD. I wrote a dissertation, so she wanted me to focus on that. And I have three children and my wife, so she really didn't want to burden us with this, and that's the big problem because maybe if I had known, several years earlier, I could have gotten more involved. So, but I would recommend always be open with your family members. Always talk about everything. If someone's not feeling well, try to support them, bring them to the doctor. But it's hard to say signs again because, again, the most famous would be the uncontrollable shaking.
Right,
And that's a big symptom. I mean, myself, I was at the doctor for my ankle the other day and I saw an elderly woman and she looked to me like she had Parkinson's because of my experiences. Obviously, I didn't say anything, but, kind of broke my heart because I wanted to talk to her and tell her that I send my love and support. And, I do this, even speaking today, we don't want anything in return. My biggest message is really that there are people, you're never alone. Like, that's the most important.
right,
And I might be just one son and one person, but I won't rest. There's some nights I don't sleep trying to just figure ways to get, individuals more aware. But I believe if there was more awareness and all families were aware, then we would have already had a cure.
wow. And we'll talk about your journey in a second, but thank you for that advice. And we try to give our listeners and folks that they're talking with similar advice, especially as they do go home for the holidays. They may see something that seems a little different than the last time they saw mom or their grandfather or whomever it may be, but also something you said that we encourage a lot: conversations that can be difficult within the family, but conversations that need to be had. So that advice of just keeping your eyes open, your ears open as you go home for the holidays, and it may have been a while since you've seen an older loved one, and are they changing? So as I said a couple minutes ago, talk to us and our audience more about this journey that you're on and what you're trying to accomplish, George.
Thank you. Yeah, again, I when I learned, I was shocked that there's 10 million people around the world that have Parkinson's, and again, it's growing. I decided not just to make this anymore togetherforsharon.com about me and my mother, but about everyone. So I've actually interviewed it's becoming to be overwhelming, but it's 400 people in 3 months.
Wow.
And those people are from literally around the world. So I've actually interviewed individuals from Africa, England, France, Spain, Italy, Australia. So you name it, I probably hit every country. And it's not about me getting this I'm not getting anything, to be honest. What I am getting is it's helping me cope because I still miss my mother. She was my best friend. We spoke like 15 times a day if that's possible.
Wow.
And we actually moved her to a community over the last year of her life. We bought a big house and we have a room here for her, and she didn't make it. So every time I walk down one of the halls of my house, I think of her like in a kind of a sadder way because she never was able to. I don't know though, to be honest, if I could have handled her though with us, because there was so many. Every day the last year was something else. And I wasn't equipped. Nobody is to be able to help her. She had the delusions and hallucinations were sometimes frightening even for her. But my bigger goal here is just to get awareness out there, and again, not just for that. A lot of that is the Parkinson's community, but also for people who aren't aware. And I just share their stories and their journeys. And sadly, in Africa, if you have Parkinson's, they actually think it's witchcraft. So
Wow.
it's a it's a terrible stigma. Other countries, they just don't have the funding for medicine. So these people, unfortunately, have nowhere to turn. So if we can even shed a little light in the situation, maybe, that can change also. I was lucky enough to work with the Michael J. Fox Foundation. I spoke to my local representative. All of your viewers, and you can also, you just contact your local congressman or woman or senators, and you can actually speak to them. There's a bill right now, the first ever in the United States in our history, it's called End Parkinson's Disease, and it's a bill that would really help fund Parkinson's research and awareness around the United States. It also would help with medications and funding for patients and caretakers to help their loved ones. So this is very, very important, very big, and I really feel honored to be a part of it. I have a link of my speech. It was just a 3-minute speech. I actually had practiced it for a month, no problem, and I've spoken in front of hundreds of people. No, I have no problem speaking, but when I got to like the second minute, I talked about my mother and how she'll never be able to blow bubbles. She used to love to sit in the backyard for Sunday mornings with her 3 grandkids, and she'll never be able to do that. And I fell apart during the call. So,
Wow.
even now talking about it, it's not always easy, but you have to go through tough times sometimes to come out, with more positive solutions for others. And really, that's what this is now about. Unfortunately, my mother has passed. I'm here, but it's really about the other families gathering for the holidays and the other people still fighting this disease. That's all I care about, and I do consider them all my family now.
That is an amazing journey that you're on, George. Wow, I'm just kind of sitting back thinking about all this. And obviously, before we wrap up in a few minutes, if you can give information, websites, any phone number, things like that, where people can go. Is there a place people can donate? Share what you'd like.
Sure. Again, I want to thank you. It's really been an honor and we became like family too, even in our short time together. We started www.together for Sharon. It just spelled out together, FOR Sharon.com, really for the purposes of having a place where people can go to find resources. When I was going through this, I had nothing. Like I felt so alone, felt helpless. I went through all the stages like denial, anger. If you look at an old psychological class on Maslow, I'm sure you could hierarchy you can look in. I probably hit every single one except I'm still stuck in grief. A piece of me left when my mother left forever. But I try to do this to help others. So if you go to our website, you can look about our story, our journey. You can find the 400 interviews. There's a link to donations. I do not, and we do not accept money. And the reason I don't is because it's not about us and me. We've donated about $10,000 of our own family to the American Parkinson's Disease Association, but we work with many organizations. But I really wanted, again, if you just go to the website, click on partnerships, you'll see, different things like charitable walks you can go to your own community. There's info on music therapy and different therapies that my mother tried. Even if it took away, thinking about Parkinson's for 10 minutes, it felt like a
Sure.
beautiful thing. If you go to my website and go to the bottom of the first page, I've been playing guitar for 30 years, and I actually had an amazing opportunity. A week before my mother passed, we had the music therapist in, and we decided to play a song together, Memory, from the show Cats in New York when I was a kid. My mother took me to see Cats on Broadway, and it was a memory that I'll never forget. So I had an honor to actually play it, and we videotaped it. You won't see my mother. Unfortunately, by that time, she was really doing bad. I think it was the last time she ever spoke. When we finished that song, she looked over a little bit and moved. She wasn't moving well, and said thank you, and I loved it. And those are the last words she ever said. So that was, we thank God we got that onto video.
Wow.
And then my favorite part, just because it's fun, is the media section. And there you'll see things like magazines I've done, articles, blogs, books, a gallery, and also movies, music. But something that's important is now, like our podcast, I'll be putting this up there permanently. But I think it's, again, important to share our conversation, because I think you made the most important point today. If you don't have the conversation, then we'll never move forward. And there are a lot of topics I'm still never learned that I try to talk about, like medical marijuana license and death with dignity, which Florida doesn't have. And my poor mother lay there for 2 weeks without like even being alive except a heartbeat, which was horrifying. And we just, we need more conversations that people just, still don't want to have. Obviously, it's not fun, so
Right.
it's not enjoyable. But if we prepare, we didn't have long-term care. I mean, budgeting and money is another whole podcast for another time. But I spent $12,000 a month only on care people, trying to kind of watch over her because she didn't really sleep. And that's not counting food, living and entertainment. So normal family cannot afford that. And these are the things, again, that have to be discussed. So just to wrap up, again, I really am grateful to you and your listeners for giving me the time to, talk about our story, but also for teaching me that I still have a lot to learn, and we're all family in this fight. And, again, I just feel our voices are just so much stronger together.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, George. This is an amazing story, amazing journey. I compliment you for everything you're doing. We will certainly get this out to our listeners. We hope that they spread this as well. I hope people go to your website. Yeah, and a lot of what we do, you just talked about really trying to help people understand this little tiny word called care. There can be a lot of different diseases. There can be falls. There can be a combination thereof. And something you talked about a few minutes ago as well, cost. And the unfortunate part is most people don't understand what care costs. So again, I want to thank you. I know you have a very busy schedule. I thank you for coming on the podcast. And I hope, my hope with every episode that we do, if this can help one person, that's that's fantastic. So, George, thank you again as I wrap up. And folks, as I say on every episode, until we talk again, have yourself an awesome day.